Back when game consoles made sense, games like F-Zero X, Roll Cage and Wipeout represented the pinnacle of the futuristic arcade racing game. Unfortunately, since then, though many have tried, no one has really managed to capture the essence of this classic late 90s, early 2000s genre of racing game. Until maybe today, with the launch of Redout. Now before we get the champagne out, give the developer back rubs and massage their toes, there is one ginormous naked elephant in the room. And that naked elephant is the virtual reality support in this game. Now it wouldn't really matter and it wouldn't be a problem, but they do make a thing of this game having VR support, and it says on the bottom of their trailer, OpenVR, Oculus VR, VR, VR's the future. So you can't help but be forgiven for thinking that VR might be a priority with this game. Unfortunately, it's almost as if they've gone through a checklist of exactly what not to do if you want to do a virtual reality game. And it's not like these things are subtle. The moment you load the game up, you're going to be accelerated from menu screen to menu screen in a way that's probably more intense than the actual driving in the game. Another thing that's quite painful and makes you feel as if you've had some kind of weird torturous eye examination is that the UI elements are placed at different depths. So at one minute you'll be looking at one screen and you kind of got used to it, and the next minute you're all buzz-eyed wondering what's gone on. It's just all over the place. Now when it comes to the driving in virtual reality, in the first person view with the UI turned off, it can actually be quite nice, and it's really satisfying turning one way and looking in the opposite direction as you would in a real car, even though this is obviously a hyper fast, hyper abstract futuristic racer. Other than that though, really VR is not the way to play this game, and let's start listing the reasons why. You've got a lower field of view with it being one-to-one for virtual reality, but then no further back camera angle to compensate for that. As a result, you've literally got the floor cam view, a sort of bonnet view and a sort of on the roof view, none of which give you the awareness that you get when playing a game in 2D. Also, all field of view effects have been removed for obvious reasons, but this again really damages the sense of speed and also really damages the flow and a lot of the satisfaction that you get from playing this game on a 2D screen. And the biggest, worst hurdle that this game faces when it comes to its VR implementation, aside from everything else, is just its erratic performance. Even if you've got a fairly beefy computer and you turn the graphics on pretty low, you will find that there's parts of tracks that just cause slowdown. The biggest offender being the wormholes they've got, these little wormhole gates that you go through on some stages. And whatever you do, whatever settings, put everything on the lowest settings, they always cause stutter and frame rate drops. So though Redout does have VR support, I would say I wouldn't buy this for virtual reality, and it's not a VR game. It's only one step above something like Vorpex implementation, and in some ways it's even worse than some titles I've played with Vorpex. Definitely, as I say, only buy this for VR if you really know what you're getting yourself into. Having said all that, in 2D, this is a pretty bloody fantastic game. The core handling mechanics are satisfying and offer a moderate amount of depth, but they're easy to pick up and relatively simple without them being too intimidating when you first get into it. The track designs gradually ramp up in complexity, starting off with tracks with nice smooth curves and flowing corners, and then later on you unlock tracks with tighter angles that require a bit more subtle use of the accelerator and brake. And as you play through the game, you gradually unlock different crafts and upgrades to your crafts to keep the gameplay somewhat fresh and interesting. Now the game's not going to completely blow your pants off in terms of its content. It very much does sort of hark back to that old school game and that old school arcade presentation. Also, where I think it could have been a bit better is maybe the introduction of more powerful weapons or more varied weapons and more weapon effects, more along the lines of Wipeout than F-Zero X. And it does have to be said, Redout is more a racing game along the lines of something like Trackmania, for example, than it is a combat racer like Roll Cage or Wipeout. It's also worth saying that the online multiplayer is somewhat limited and it can be at times really hard to find a game as there's not that many people playing this online. Really, if you're picking this up, it's mostly to play through the single player. All said and done, I think this is a really good game. The launch price of $24.99 is perhaps a bit steep, though it does have the polish there, and if you were looking for this type of game, it'll be well worth that price. All in all, Redout's an absolutely fantastic title. It's just a shame that the VR implementation at this point in time is a little bit lackluster. Let's hope they fix that so there's nothing to complain about in the future. If you found this review video useful, interesting and mildly enjoyable, please click the like button, subscribe to the channel and let us know what you think in the comments. Until next video, goodbye. As we've seen with many virtual reality titles, though the HTC VIVE controllers are tracked with absolute precision, it's simply not the case that a developer could slap them into their Unity project and end up with something that plays well. It's the small details that make or break VR games. And One Hamster, the developers of Racket NX, understand the details, which is perhaps why this is